Good evening to all of you. A warm welcome to our distinguished speaker for today, Sandhya Sriram, and to all the participants who have joined in. Uh, there are participants on Zoom, and then it is being streamed live on YouTube, somehow YouTube channel. So there are participants there also. Sama, just to recap very shortly, since we've been speaking about it, this is the 13th episode of Analytics Wednesday. And today, the topic is practical applications of technology for audit, which includes analytics, RPA, visualization, among other things. Very relevant for internal auditors, even for external auditors in today's environment. Sama Audit Systems and Software Private Limited in the last 20 years has been working in the area of bringing technology solutions to internal auditors in the country, external auditors. Today, it represents not only IDEA, but ALESA, which is a continuous control monitoring application, client server, or continuous control auditing solution for internal auditors or CFOs or process owners. Smart Exporter, which is a ETL for SAP. Caseware working papers, which are basically end-to-end solution for statutory audit firms and even for corporates who want to use the financials and IFRS, etc. And of course, the flagship product IDEA, which is very popular and is literally present in the government, private sector, and the CA firms in the country today. That is an effort of 20 years by a lot of team members. Now, with that small introduction, other than the consulting and training e-learning modules that we have, which are there online, where people can log on and get trained on IDEA 101, 102, fraud analytics, live trainings which are being offered. So there's a bouquet of products and services being offered by Sama Audit. Now, with that brief introduction, let me straight away formally introduce Sandhya. First of all, we are very thankful for her to speak at this forum and enlighten all the participants, give her views, share her experience. So I'll formally introduce Sandhya to all of you. She is the Global Head of Audit, Risks and Ombuds for Wipro Enterprises. Before this, she was with Wipro Limited, and there she was in the role of Global Head of Finance for Consumer Business Unit. Prior to joining the Wipro Group, she was with Unilever for more than a decade and a half, where she was in different roles. So she brings a lot of different perspectives to audit today, because she was in business partnering, in controllership, shared services, IT, project management, supply chain, finance, etc. Among her many achievements, some of them I just highlight. She was placed in India's top 100 women in finance by AIWMI. She has been awarded the CA CFO twice and a CA Professional Achiever once by ICAI. She was placed in the top 50 young leaders in India out of 27,000 plus participants by Economic Times in 2011. She is a chartered accountant and she has secured rank in foundation, inter, and final examinations. She is a regular speaker of national and international conferences of ICAI and CFO forum on various topics. Let me also congratulate her, because only yesterday, I think, or today, there has been an announcement that she has been appointed as a treasurer of Institute of Internal Auditors India Bangalore chapter. And on a personal note, she is a mother of a 14-year-old and looks at passion as the key to professional success and personal gratification. I think with that mantra, last line, on a personal note, let me hand over to Sandhya to speak to all of us and share her views on the subject.
Thank you, Deepji, for your kind introduction. It's an honor for me to be part of this session today and to be able to discuss this topic with. Am I audible well?
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Okay, great. It's an honor for me to be here, and I'm really grateful for all of you who've taken time out so late in the evening to go through this topic with me. What we will try to do today over the next 1 hour, we will look at various practical applications of technology in audit. If some of these are already covered in some of your earlier sessions and it's a repeat, then my apologies for that. But we will try to pick up some practical examples on each of them, and I'm hoping that in an hour or so, we are able to cover this topic. So I want to start my session with some terminologies. Sesquipedalian, perspicacity, I'm struggling to pronounce myself, my own slide, limpid. Now, these are all Shashi Tharoor's favorite words, I think, but essentially these mean some small, simple words like long, shrewd, clear. I think what we have done over a period of time is made items and made concepts sound so complex and so difficult that sometimes we lose the simplicity in the concepts or in the actions that we are trying to take. So my endeavor today is to see how I can simplify some of the concepts of use of technology. Now, I'm taking an approach of an ABC. So we will cover A to Z of technology over the next 1 hour. And maybe towards the end, we'll see if we can pick some questions. So the starting part is audit automation, and I'm assuming that a lot of the people in this call are audit professionals, and therefore this may be a preach to the choir slide. But just to simplify this entire concept, I think if we have to look at where all technology plays a role, it's in audit task automations, for example, risk control matrices, how you can digitizing work papers, getting better report drafting, monitoring of implementation status. So reduce the workload or simplify the workload of the auditor. Audit process automation, where we provide enhanced tools to be able to do the process in a faster fashion. So whether it is statistical tools, regression, correlation, sampling, or it can be some automated tasks, we'll talk about some of them. Or it can be some monitoring routines where we're looking at certain bots that sit and track certain activities, and therefore they report back exceptions. Or it can be usage of IoTs, etc. So there is this big chunk of process automation which makes the audit happen in a more efficient manner and able to cover more scale in audit. The third aspect is how could you bring intelligence in audits? And this is where the power of the predictive, analytics, cognitive, use of AI, etc. come. And we will look at some of them during the course of this session. The B for me is to be the better auditor. Our endeavor at the end of all of this is how can we be the better auditor? And that would mean better audit execution, being able to make better predictions on the outcomes of the business processes, being able to build better process resilience as a consequence of the audit observations we are making, and be able to drive better insights in the audit process. So what you see here is from the book Homo Sapien. Now, writing, we all know writing. This paved the way for social order, and everything that is there is because someone invented writing. And the book Homo Sapiens says that writing was invented between 3500 and 3000 BC by the Sumerians. Now, can anyone guess what was the first recorded name in history? It was Kushim. Now, can you see that Kushim? I think it's it was, of course, not in English, but Kushim was not a ruler, not a prophet, not a great poet. Kushim was an accountant. So our history as accountants or auditors or bookkeepers or people that review the hygiene of the bookkeeping dates back to the origin of written record in humanity itself. And over the years, we have just adapted, evolved, and excelled, been better at what we do. And therefore, when now we are faced with technology, and many times we think that, oh my God, this is a new world and that I don't understand. But we've paved the world, we've paved the way for the world to be what it is today. And therefore, I am very confident that all of us as accountants and auditors will be able to ride on this technology wave and create value as we have always done. And therefore, this presentation gives a little bit of flavors on areas that we could look at to be the better auditor. But then there is this capability for tech. So when we are starting on a tech journey, as a concept, I think we have to see where we are in our journey. And therefore, from there, we have to build. There are various benchmarks or yardsticks to see what am I, where is my benchmark, where am I initial, am I developing, am I defined? And at every stage when we are making a technology intervention, I think it's important for us to see if we are progressing from a more lower level of tech knowledge capability to a higher level of tech knowledge and capability. Now, a recent PwC report highlighted this importance of digitally fit audit function. And when they said digitally fit, they measured it in two ways. One is having the right skill and competencies in place to provide strategic advice to stakeholders and offer assurance, like regarding, say, digital transformation risks, or, and changing internal audit's own process and services to ensure that the internal audit function is technologically capable and is able to respond to the organization needs. So they looked at it from two parameters, and therefore they, in their study, they came up with saying that if they were to split people between what they call as dynamics are digitally fit teams, actives are people that are on the journey of digital fitness, and beginners, it was interesting that more than 50% of the people are beginners. But that's a glass empty way of saying it. I would rather flip it and say almost 50% of the people are either dynamics or actives, which means that the awareness and adoption of tech has been really significant in the past few years, and we are going very well in this journey. Just one more aspect I want to add here is that if an organization has high digital fitness, the difference that they are able to make in the outcomes that they deliver to their businesses are geometrically better. So which means that, for example, say 39% of beginners and 45% of active category audit departments met met business goals or exceeded business goals. The same number goes to almost more than 75% for dynamics, which means almost 2.5x is the difference of value that a digitally fit audit team is able to create for its stakeholders. And therefore, there is a very, very strong case to invest in technology in the audit teams. Now, but when you start with investing into a technology journey, I think the first question or the first challenge that we encounter is this dealing with data. Now, because, and we all know this, different organizations are at different levels of maturity. There are 5 data challenges. This is my classification, not and I've taken some learnings from a benchmarking study that was undertaken by Protiviti to say that you have to identify where the data resides. And it's not very easy sometimes to know where all the sources of the data is, because some data elements could also be manual sources. And for us to do an integrated or analytics or technology implementation in a particular audit process, we need to be able to integrate all the data elements. There are sometimes system limitations, system constraints. I don't want to elaborate a lot on that. But for us, if we want to build a better analytics enabled audit function, we have to have data design clarity, ability to prototype, outcome orientation, which would mean that I need to be upfront clear on what is the outcome that the audit automation or audit technology intervention is going to deliver. And most important is that it should be able to influence business process change. There is no point in doing varied level of automations and analytics in audit without it delivering a change in the way the business looks at its processes and making it better. And of course, a research mindset is always good. How we could look at newer technologies, newer ways of doing things. Even the childlike learning mindset is what helps us build technology in audit. Now, I think this is very straightforward slide. I'm not going to be spending too much time on this slide, but what this essentially says is that how do I expand the horizon of audit and expand the analytics journey? We create the right information collection, create the data sets, perform planning and testing, and therefore how effectively are we able to create outcomes or reporting measures through the use of technology and analytics, which will then result in business process improvement or identification of business weakness, or be able to drive actions that are delivering business value. So that's really the outcome that we want to deliver at the end of our audit journey, right? So now I'm going to go into various concepts. These concepts are not in any order of priority. These concepts are in the order of the alphabets that they fit, because it's an ABC exercise. But I'm sure that as you go through this, you will see the relevance of how it all fits in. Now, one big area where automation plays a role is in anomaly detection. I think you've had sessions in the past on anomaly detection and how that can be used. But what I want to start as a kind of a tip on when we work with anomaly detections is that one of the most underrated steps in anomaly detection is the planning step, which is how to, what is the problem definition, getting the buy-in of the key stakeholders, and then getting executive sponsorship. So there is this saying, I think Albert Einstein said that, if I have 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. So when we jump onto an anomaly detection process, many times the mistake that we make is that we jump to saying, let the system is the leader, let it throw all the type of anomalies that it can throw out, and then I will sit with that outcome and then decide what to do. That's really the wrong approach to anomaly detection. The right approach is to say, what are the type of anomalies that my business can have? And therefore, how can I tell the system to build it? So one of the examples that I've given here is fuzzy logic. Now, we all know, I think it's also there in the idea tool, and many of you would have used that. How do we implement similar fuzzy matching instead of exact matching? Now, the important planning aspect there, thinking aspect there, is what do we define as similar? So, for example, you say strip out any zeros, strip out any alphabetical characters, strip out punctuation characters. We have to plan effectively when we are giving a fuzzy logic implementation to know what should be the fuzzy logic the system should search for. If you just throw it at the system saying, find all the fuzzy logic examples that you can think of, then the anomalies it will throw will become unmanageable to handle. Another example I want to give is invoice dates. Now we can say that what is the definition of, what is a fuzzy logic for invoice date? You want to look for similar invoice date. So for your organization context, you have to decide, saying that is the difference amounting to 7 days? That is a acceptable anomaly. So we say any date tolerance which is 7 days is okay. Similarly, amounts, we, for example, for your organization is 5% a good anomaly. Sometimes give the standard ones. If it's twice the amount, if it's the first 4 digits, so 123.45 and 1234.55. Those are common errors people can do. So when we are trying to define a anomaly detection tool, I think it's very important that we have clarity on whether we are building the right tool criteria, tool selection criteria, logic selection criteria, so that the outcome that the anomaly detection tool throws out for us is meaningful. Now, again, on fraud detection, there are various tools. One of them, of course, is Benford law. Many of you will be aware, which is that, if we randomly select a number, the probability of the first digit will be 1 is so much. So there is a Benford law. Now we can create these functionalities. So let's take an example how Benford law can help. So for example, say Benford law concludes that out of the, say, a group of numbers, that the first digit will be 1 is about 30% of the time. Now you can maybe use the same law and say first digit will to be 8 is a 5% of the time. Now, if I look at the account payable invoices and I see that the first digit of the invoice is 8, 50% of the time, then it may be either that legitimate payments start with 8, or we may have some fictitious invoices. So that's where we apply some of these fraud detection concepts. Again, concepts like rounded off invoice amounts. When we look for fraud detection, see, anybody who's trying to commit a fraud mostly will take rounded invoice numbers. So it won't be like 123.55. It'll be 10,000, 5,000, 2,000. So when we see many rounded numbers coming, that's another way for look for fraud. So there are abnormal invoice volumes we could look at. We could look at above average payment for vendor. So we could look at the trend of what we normally pay the vendor. And suddenly, if we're seeing some abnormal spikes in what we pay for the vendor, we could look at whether there is a cross check, whether sometimes we can go and check the PAN number of the vendor and then look for whether that PAN number is a valid PAN number. And all of this can be done only if we set effective logics, number one. Number two, we choose the right tool to run this for us. The tool can be a sophisticated tool like IDEA, it can be Excel, but whatever tool that we are choosing, we have to build the logics, build the program in that tool, deliver that automation capability. Sometimes when we say automation, we think about some big change we need to do. We need to do some massive RPA, some bot we have to run. Automation is more a mindset. Analytics is the outcome. And if we are able to build the logic of what we want to see, even simple tools can deliver disproportionate outcomes. So that's on anomaly detection. Now, then comes to a more advanced concepts of machine learning, NLP, predictive. See, even if you can't get from good to great, I think it's a great journey if we get to good in terms of analytics to start with. But if we are already in our maturity journey, where we have reached a certain level of maturity in terms of automation and analytics, I think it's a good time for us to start exploring whether we are ready for the next level. So I want to share here some examples of, for example, let's say contract lifecycle management. Okay, it is critical for any efficiency. So what one of the tools that's available in the market, that they built a contract intelligence tool. So what it does is, it uses natural language processing and smart OCR so that it takes kind of auto classifies the documents, then streamlines the process review, and then throws out what are the risky clauses which are there in the contract that we must be aware of. Now that helps us automate the contract review process. And imagine an organization which say deals in contract management, has tens and thousands of contracts. How much power it will give to the organization if you are able to deliver that value. So that is the, I think somebody raised a hand. Yes.
I think we don't have any questions so far. Something.
Oh, I thought someone raised a hand. Sorry. But maybe I'll take a pause here. Aneha has raised her hand. But maybe I'll take a pause here. Are we making sense? Are we able to grasp what we are trying to do here? Am I going too fast, too slow, too abstract? Any feedback you'd like to share so I can course correct?
I think if any of you want to say anything, you can put it in the chat box or the Q&A, whatever you feel. I don't see anything in the chat box or the Q&A, Sanjay. So I think maybe we can keep going, and usually at the end we take up all the questions. I think just one. I think there's one question. We are going great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's one aspect of how we could use machine learning because sometimes what happens is this concept of machine learning, natural language processing and all, sometimes we feel very abstract about it. We think that it's not something that we can do in the normal course of events, but when we look at some of these examples, it gives us confidence. Now, the power of the predictive. Now, that's another one where, we're going to cover that a little bit more at a later stage. But that's another one where we can play a very, very significant role. Now, I'll give you one more example. Say travel claims. Now, AI-powered tools so there are organizations which have gone to a state where nobody actually checks travel claims anymore. The AI knows to see what are the kind of claims the person makes, what are the anomalies that they see to the claim, and whether those anomalies pass the rule sets that the AI has learned overseeing multiple claims. So some of these capabilities of the cognitive machine learning, NLP, etc., are here and now. Many organizations are using them. And these are not esoteric stuff. These are stuff that we can, if depending on the stage of maturity of our technology journey, as we make progress, if we think we have got to a great level of maturity in the phase of automating the functionalities and analytics outcome of audit, the next step to go is to explore the power of the cognitive. Now, this is actually my favorite slide. It's a slide which says how to train your dragon, which is your people. Now, this concept of purple people, this was a term that was pioneered by business intelligence and analytics expert Wayne Eckerson. He argues that these are team members who are able to combine red tech with blue business, translating between data scientists and decision makers, like that. So the red and blue in the spectrum combines and makes purple. Now, as we become more and more, we progress in our journey as auditors, the more purple we become more increasingly valuable, which means we blend our business skills with our technology skills. So we are able to articulate business requirement, identify data needs, work with technical specialists. We don't need to be the technical specialists. We need to understand what we can ask the technical specialists to do to give us outcomes, and we can produce workable solutions. Now, although tech specialists may write codes, develop algorithms, shape models, etc., the system, the process needs inputs from purple people to achieve business goals. Now, these 6 skills actually is a reference from an ICAEW paper on finance in a digital world. And if you see the skills that we have to develop to be better technology users in audit, what comes naturally to us, number 1, business proficiency skill. We largely have data intuition, but somehow our data intuition is a little more physical. When you look at the numbers, we have the intuition to say what the numbers speak. We have to lift that data intuition to a level where we can predict how to model the data to get outcomes. So there is some work many of us have to do on that. Some basic programming skills. We don't need to be some big programming champion, but these are solvable problems through programming. The understanding of that helps us, if we develop some basic programming skills. Data wrangling. This is a very, very underrated skill when we look at ourselves, because we think that, after all, data is coming from somewhere. I have to put it through some tool and some outcome will come. That's absolutely not true, because the business processes are so complex and so unique to each business. Someone has to apply judgment to clean, blend, and transform that data so that better outcomes can come. And of course, mathematics, some statistical methods, some techniques helps. And above all, a very sharp learning mindset, aptitude to continuously learn and unlearn. That's what makes us purple people, and that's what makes us better leaders, audit leaders in a technology context. Moving on to the next slide, this is a bit about the concept of IoT. Again, IoT as a concept is very, very from an audit point of view, it's a very ignored concept, because as audit people, we normally think that IoT is some business problem solving solution. Now, I'm going to give you one example for what are, or I'm going to give you a few examples of why we need to understand the IoT solutions that are deployed in our organization, and why we need to have a point of view on them as internal auditors. So let's assume that there is a third-party participation in the IoT design. Just one example: there is a third party who collects that data. Now, what is the data security of what the third party is able to share and get from our organization? One aspect. Second aspect is, what is the vulnerability of the risk that are existing in the third party's landscape in affecting our landscape? Is that not something the internal auditor must look at? And extend the same example. Do we have a proper SLA with the third party? If we don't have an effective SLA with the third party on managing the risks of the data that they are processing, and the data is being given to us as the primary organization, then that risk shifts to us. Again, a role that the internal auditor has to play. Now, if assuming the IoT is a critical part of the business execution, and if there is a failure of the IoT, so are we ready for the business continuity plan for the IoT? Again, something the auditor has to look at. Similarly, data retention, disclosures, privacy implications, security implications, unauthorized access, because in IoTs, there is virtual security, but there is also the concept of physical security, because we're talking about a physical presence of the device at some end from which data is coming to us. And overall architectural ownership in the organization. Now, when we as auditors come across a situation in the business where IoT is being deployed, we have to, our antenna has to rise, and we have to ask, saying that what are the risks of this environment and how these risks are getting addressed. The reason I cover this in a slide, which is about use of technology, is that we cannot take a myopic view of what technology I am using in the organization and to be able to look at my data and my processes. But we must also be able to look at what are the various types of technology that the organization is using, and do I have the technical capability to assess the risk and the control measures which are deployed in these technologies. That's when we will be a holistic auditor. And of course, in all of this, we need very strong analytical skills, very strong technology skills to be able to give a point of view. Now, having said that, there is also this thing of just juxtaposing physical and virtual. And this actually can be an enabler as much as a, like while we saw in the previous slide, saying that we have to develop skills to audit. We can also use some of these tools to improve our audit effectiveness. For example, let's take this shipment tracking. Many organizations have tools for tracking shipments. They have IoT chips or some sort of a GPS tracker in the trucks that get sent, so that they can track whether the truck has gone to the customer or not. Now, let's assume that these are contracts which are delivery at site to the customer. If we are performing an audit function, instead of asking for the acknowledgement only from the customer saying, do you have the gate stamp at the customer, to see whether revenue is recognized within the period or not. We all do that, right? As on 31st March, we will check if the truck has entered the customer premises, customer has given a stamp, then I can recognize the revenue. Otherwise, I will de-recognize that revenue. Alternative control for that can be that you check the IoT of the truck that has left, and then the GPS data of the truck that has left, and you can actually analyze whether the truck entered the customer premise or not. So there are many ways, if we understand the landscape of the organization and the investment the organization has made in technology for business enablement, we can use that to become better technology enabled auditors who use technology for creating business value. Are you with me so far? Are there any questions? Yes. You're all with me so far? Great. The next one we would, I'd like to move, sorry. I'm very sorry, I'm having some issue with my screen, it's frozen. Yeah. So this is the next part, which is about knowledge management. Now, the other very, very underrated topic is knowledge management. A lot of what we learn as auditors, whether it is technology enabled or manually process enabled, one of the things we do a very, very poor job at is be able to create that knowledge as available for posterity. So I am sharing here an example, and this is a very simple example, but one of the activities which we do is every time we pick a risk in a particular process, we then go back to, we have the tool that we use for managing all the risk and control matrices. So we then go back to that tool, and in that tool, we enter this new risk I found. It takes a lot of effort and initiative for people to do that, because the fancier part of doing an internal audit job is to catch a particular observation and then be able to build it and report it. But then going back on what was the risk, what were the processes that we checked, which enabled us catch those observations, and be able to replicate it into the master process, sub-process, risk and control matrix. And therefore, it is available for posterity. And therefore, next time when that risk or that process is being tested, the risk is not missed. Now, that's a very, very important aspect of use of technology in audit. It's not just technology, but it's basic discipline, but technology can enable. So effective archival, retrieval, and intuitive archival. I think one of the underrated aspects is intuitive archival. Today, as internal auditors, if you ask your team to say, give me all the times, say, we have found differences in, stock verification across all the audit reports that we have done. Now, it'll be very difficult for them to actually retrieve it quickly and give it to you, and without opening the audit reports and without looking at what are the various observations we made. Because when we create observations, we don't tag them with the right keywords so that they can be intuitively retrieved. So another important tech investment which I would recommend we should make is, how do we intuitively index our various audit procedures, steps, outcomes, processes in a way that archival and retrieval is simpler. Now, this is I'm not going to spend time on this. Another place where we invest in technology is just managing the audit life cycle. It's a standard investment that everyone makes. I'm sure most of you would have some tool with which you must be managing your audit life cycle, but another aspect where technology plays a role. Again, the next one which I wanted to talk about is statistical techniques. So I have picked up some of the statistical techniques that we do, but this is just an example. But we could look at, we have to decide what statistical techniques we want to build. See, the reason why I emphasize on this here is that many times we think that if I have to invest, if I have to, I have to invest in some tool, and that tool will give me some outcome, and therefore I'm digitized. Really, the investment we have to make is in our own capability to use tools, our own capability to use to use the knowledge that we have gained, and be able to use that knowledge and create outcomes. Tool is only an enabler. So which is why for me, M is very important. We as auditors need to go back to our class 8, class 9, class 10, class 11 textbooks. Look at some of the simple mathematical statistical techniques we learned there and try to bring them back into our audit process. The next one which I wanted to go to, which letter are we in? N. We've got to N now. N is, this is another important aspect of the A to Z of audit, which is cyber. Now, I'm not sure if I need to, if it's something that I really need to invest time, but what I feel sometimes is that we think that cyber is some esoteric stuff that some technology person will come and do. We may, for some checks, we may need technology intervention, but we can build simple skills, simple ITGC skills, have a small manual, build some expertise on what questions to ask. And then if you want to do some advanced level cyber check, you can probably bring an expert to help you with it. But in some form, no auditor can disown the ability to look at the security landscape of the organization. And therefore, we have to build technology capabilities in the audit organization to be able to give a point of view on the technology, on the cyber landscape. The other one, which is very underrated and we as auditors try to stay away from it, is social media. Now, there is, of course, social media actually happens at multiple levels. The small blue box, if you see in the middle, this is something most of us do. We assess risk of our transactions on social media. I think that capability many of us have built. So if we have an e-commerce web, or we have a website, we know how we can assess the risk of that, or we at least know how to get external help to assess the risk of that. And I think there is reasonable amount of understanding on that space. But that's not where social media stops. So for example, there is a lot of social networking data out there. What do I mean by social networking data? Which means that, for example, many of your customers are actually coming into various forums. Somebody may be posting on Twitter saying, this is the interaction I had with the company, and therefore, this is the experience I had. It's a big queue for us to pick. So, for example, if 5 customers repeatedly say, I ordered, I paid money, but I got no delivery, that means that it's an alarm for us to see if there is some fraud happening in the delivery organization, which we have to address. Now, our ability to sense this data is the best way to do it is that either our organizations will have their own, the marketing team will have some social media sensing in investments. Most companies do that now, where the marketing team actually senses what interactions are happening in social media. Even there will be some social media crawler which will crawl through the web and be able to throw those interactions. So getting access to that data and be able to have a point of view on that data, depending on volume, either through some small automation or manually, will give us a very good clue of how the customers are reacting to what's happening in the organization. Now, the third and the next level of this piece is where we are understanding the universe of interactions. What are universe of interactions? So for example, say, this is a WhatsApp forward or I think I saw it in some movie where this person actually takes a photo of her birthday celebration. Somebody's put cake on her face, and so she takes a photo of the cake on her face and then puts an office birthday celebration at office. But if you actually see behind her, there is a whiteboard which has all the sales target and how much they have achieved. Many organizations have whiteboards where to motivate employees, they have sales target, how much they have achieved. So, which means that your employee inadvertently is offering content into social media on what is the sales number of the organization. Now, I don't think I have a direct solution of how do we crack these interactions, but I think these can be addressed through better awareness. We have to consistently sensitize employees on the impact of posting on social media, and a role that the audit team can play is to assess how effective is the employee outreach. Is the organization able to build a policy around it? Is there a very clear social media policy? How are the defenses in the organization? So for example, what are the things that are not allowed? You cannot post any organization sensitive data. Is it something that will be obviously there in every SOP? But does your SOP also say that when you are posting anything on social media, look at how, if there is anything sensitive on it which is getting inadvertently shared, sensitizing employees. So that's the large aspect of the online monitoring. And I think that's also another aspect of technology, which we sometimes overlook, thinking that, okay, that's something that, the business has to take care of. But if we are guarding if we are the third line of defense for the organization, it's almost like the outer cover. We can't leave holes in our third line of defense saying, maybe somebody in the second or the first line of defense will catch. Okay, the next is the power of the predictive. Now here I want to give one example. So annually, the DBS group audit team, they do a risk profiling exercise where they select branches that have been audited that year. They traditionally do this with a criteria. Now these criteria have been chosen with collective years of experience. Essentially, in layman terms, what it does is it takes into account measurements of multiple attributes of the branches. So it studies correlation between the branches, likelihood of events, etc. Then after some detailed data crunching that happens, they have distilled this into a data model and then they do a risk score. Now this data-driven model helps them, this risk score in DBS, they have some 130 attributes based on which they give the risk score. Now, after they started doing this data-driven model to choose the branch which they will go and audit, apparently they were 50% more accurate at predicting which branch needed the audit when compared to the previous, when they were doing based on gut feel. Okay, this is a big branch. This is a voluminous branch. This is a branch that recently had some change management. Yes, gut is, see, end of the day, the human, we are all there because we bring our gut and our ability to look beyond data to the table. But then the data can augment it. And while, power of the predictive is much a larger concept, but I thought this gives a perspective of how even in predicting which units we want to audit, we can use predictive analysis. Now, I'm deeply aware that I have only 10 minutes. So I'm not going to cover the rest of the slides in as much detail, but I'll just quickly rush through. We all know what RPA is, but in audit, how can I use RPA? I think, for example, if you say want to re-verify a BRS process, that's a fantastic place where you can do RPA, because you can automate the process of re-verifying the BRS, and therefore you don't need to do a sample-based BRS check, but you can do 100% BRS check. So it may be worthwhile to look at some of the standard procedures we execute in audit, and therefore build some bots or RPAs that can execute them for us, which gives us scale and completeness. Now, the key success factors, of building an effective automation function in audit. This actually is from ICAI. Actually did a thought leadership event in collaboration with the ICAI. ICAEW did with the ICAI, and in that they had put this approaches to automation. Now I'm only wanting to focus on the last column here, which is on managing change. The most important success factor in an automation journey is how we are able to encourage people to use the tools, and how we are able to help people lead by examples, create mechanisms for grassroots initiatives. And the most important item we have to stress is on attitude. It's not about tech skills. People can pick up tech skills, but if the people don't come with an open-minded and focused attitude on continuous improvement, we're going to go nowhere. There are various tools and utilities available. They can be off-the-shelf tools. They can be Excel macro scripts. You can write small codes with Python R. There can be bolt-ons on ERP. Now, the final aspect of all this, what we are doing, is our ability to visualize. How we are able to present data in a way that people can gather what we are trying to say in a simplistic form. Some of the tools which we can use is, say, waterfalls, where you can show the trend and where you're seeing increases, where you're seeing decreases. In audit specifically, progress bars are a good tool to show how much progress have people made. Data maps, tornado diagram again is a very good visualization tool. There are many and many, I'm sure all of you may be using, but one definite input I will have is that think very hard on what visualization you want to deliver in your audits, because that really packs a punch in your outcomes. Now, this is my almost kind of final slide, which is that the X factor in all of this is you. It's not the tool you use. It's not the technology you use. It's not the most high-end computing power that you have in your organization. It is you and your people that can drive change, that can drive the right attitude in tech enabling your organization. And with that, I am ready for Q&A. And you would have seen that there is one slide, one letter that is still missed, which is hopefully that we will all attain Zen in technology automation in our journey.
Thank you very much, Sandhya. Thanks a lot. It was when you're talking about the concepts about technology for auditors, A to Z, it was like, music to my ears, because last 20 years we have been talking to people about technology for auditors, and it resonates. Your thoughts, what you talked about A to Z, resonates what we have been talking about at different points in time. I can talk about, pick up few concepts like you talked about. All the concepts are wonderful. All of them require each slide which you presented, each concept which you talked about require a lot of time, effort, and competence from the internal auditor, by the internal audit function per se, to implement, to institutionalize, to ensure that in that journey for excellence, the internal auditor imbibes that. We talked about digital fit auditor, we talked about good to great, the purple people, how to train your dragon. That was a very good, concept which you put in, how to train your people. Knowledge management systems, people usually miss that out. In each auditor tries to excel, but misses out on institutionalizing that knowledge for the team. Basically, you don't build on the knowledge management systems, you just do individuals excel, and then it phases out. So there are cycles for internal departments in the maturity where it goes up, then it comes down. Why? Because they have not built in knowledge management to institutionalize the systems per se. The 5 data challenges which you presented again, we keep talking about it. Look at all those 5 elements of data challenges, because that's very necessary even when you go out to implement idea or any other solution for the internal department, any analytic solution which you want to implement. So there are the data challenges. So I think it's a very comprehensive, tightly packed presentation. So thank you very much for that. I think there are few questions. I'll just take them up. One is from our dear friend Satish Shenoy. Sandhya, very nice presentation. I learned few things. A question. Now, I think he's talking about the same question which you talked about in one of the slides in terms of technology versus auditor, technologist versus an auditor. So he said, in cricket, there is always a decision whether to choose a good wicket keeper who is also a batsman as against a good batsman who is a wicket keeper. So likewise, in our life, is it better to be a good auditor who also has technology skills or a good technologist who can also do audit?
So you have to give it to Satish for such a
I think
beautiful
he's bold.
framing of the question.
What Satish has done is he's bold a googly. So you'll have to just tackle that.
Yes, and I think he'll give a better answer to this question than me,
But I think
I will
Sanjay,
take a stab at it.
please.
So my answer is biased because I am an auditor who understands a little bit of technology. So I will always bet on an auditor who has technology skills. But maybe there is a little bit of logic to that also. I feel that the audit as a skill is an art. It's not a science. Technology is a science. Audit is an art. Now, for us to become the artist that we are, we develop multifaceted learning in our roles. Now, sometimes because people talk so much about technology, etc., so we get little perturbed saying, oh my God, am I lacking behind? But really what we bring to the table is our core as audit professionals who understand business, who understand process, who understand how data interacts, who understands what's the right outcome for business. Now, on this, if you are able to also bring technology skills, then that's when the magic happens. So it is a biased answer, but I believe that a good auditor will having technology skills is a better choice. Satish, I know you will have a better answer than me, a more interesting answer. But
Thank you.
this is what
No, I think
I
he
could come
said
up
it is
with.
a brilliant reply. So I think there are more questions. A very insightful session. Can you share some of the tools to be used for performing data analytics?
Yes. So I feel that when you have to perform data analytics, it's less about the tool and more about what you want to do with it. So, for example, in Wipro internal audit, and I don't think we are some leading edge in data analytics. We are also on that journey, but we have done a multitude of stuff. One is that we've invested in something called micro automation, where what we have done is we train our team members on little concepts of how you can work with your data better. So, for example, something like a Power Query or some simple programming in R, or how do you use some of the macro functions in Excel. Now, depending on the need of the tool, so for example, when we were doing procurement analytics, we found that some of the capabilities that were there in the IDEA tool was very useful, because if I had to do that kind of fuzzy match, etc., it will have taken me a lot of time to be able to code it and build it and be able to come up with that logic. But when I knew this was my requirement and then that was readily available on IDEA, then we picked that up. So it is, while there are various tools and you must study all the tools, I think having clarity on the outcome you want and choosing either a tool or creating a capability in-house to deliver that outcome, I think is the most important thing here.
Okay. There's a question on what are the potential risks in this pandemic era, of sharing data on the social media. For example, the example given by the person who's asking the question is that you share a quotation or some information over WhatsApp. So what will be the precaution to be taken?
Sure. So I don't think WhatsApp is, it's a call that each organization takes. So in our organization, we have not, we don't call WhatsApp as a secure business interface tool. So therefore, we've clearly laid any important business document that is to be established for audit trail has to be, through the company email and not through WhatsApp. So that's a kind of a rule that we have put in place. But if for convenience sake, people are using tools like WhatsApp, etc., I think the few controls that the internal audit team may have to look at is how is the audit trail repository management. So which means The quotation may come in multiple ways, but then how am I tracking that the thing is retrievable? It can't be that when I ask for that quotation as a proof and then the manager looks at his phone and finds the vendor and then, see, look here in my WhatsApp, that invoice is there. That's not an acceptable proof ever, because it then makes the data very person dependent. And if that person leaves, then the data is gone. So the archival of data is one important aspect when we deal with this. The second is that you may have to test some samples and check what is the integrity of the data, which means, is it really come from the vendor? How do we know? Maybe make some inquiries with the vendor. Are we just, are we really able to have that audit trail for the source of the data, if it is important for that criteria? Though as an overarching guideline, I would strongly recommend that we must not entertain vendors communicating through WhatsApp. Every company has company emails, and there are a lot of securities that you can build on company emails. For example, most companies have data leakage protection on company emails, which means that there can somebody who can scroll and read the emails, and therefore if there is some investigation or something that you need to look at tomorrow, you are able to use your own in-house technology capabilities to be able to perform those analytics for you. So that's something that we also use when we have to run investigations, where we have to scroll through emails and look for evidences, etc. So if you are keeping the transaction and the interactions resident in your system, your ability to audit it is much better, and therefore you have to push your management to adopt that.
There's a question on if someone is initiating to turn purple from blue, where they can start, because there are so much technologies available, for a novice, that they're very confusing. So how do you start, from purple to blue?
That is absolutely true. So even like I was saying a little bit earlier, even in our own audit team, when we were starting, I think we are still blue with some shades of purple, which, we little corner of purple here and there. Is that the simple conceptual understanding of what the technology does is the starting point, which is where I was recommending that we go back to our basic mathematics, basic statistics, what is our conceptual strength as accountants and auditors. We are very strong in numbers. We are very strong in logic. We are very strong in math. Our ability to go back to that and then be able to then start small, saying, now I want to learn some small automation. Say, how do I do? I'm only doing VLOOKUP, but my problem statement is not getting solved by VLOOKUP. So what's the next available formula that is available in Excel that will give me a better outcome than VLOOKUP to solve this problem statement? So then we learn that. Then we go to, okay, now the next available outcome in Excel is not enough. So then if I have to write some small programs to solve this, how do I go about that? The other aspect is that learning is so democratized that for every problem, you can look for specific solutions online. And you could have a specific training module that's customized to solve that problem. So step by step, as we solve a problem, we have to keep looking at better and better ways of solving that problem, and then learn technology in the process. We can't learn some 20 different technologies and then look for problems to solve with that technology. That's never going to happen.
So I think these are the questions. No other questions for you, Sandhya. But again, very big thank you on behalf of Sama Audit Systems, for you to be up in office, late in office for this presentation, and an excellent presentation. For all the participants, I can say that if you have any other queries, if you want to write into Sandhya, maybe Sandhya, you can just write in your email ID. So if anybody, you can just talk about your email ID or if you forward the queries to us, we'll forward it to Sandhya so that, you can interact with her and get answers to your queries if you want to think about them tomorrow or have some queries later. So thank you very much, Sandhya. All the best to you, and great having you on this webinar today.
Thank you.
Thanks.